Om Shri Sai Ram. Good morning to everyone. I am Swaminathan, Senior Standing Counsel for the Income Tax Department. Now I am going to take you the basic understanding of the Income Tax Act. We are just going to see Income Tax Act is so cumbersome. In fact, there is plenty of sections, too many provisions, too many classes. So what is subsections, what is classes, what are the provisions, how to find out what are the rules. So I'm just going to take you the overall picture about the Income Tax Act, how to understand it in a simplest manner. Straight away we'll go to the first slide. Basic understanding of the Income Tax Act. So how many sections are there? There are 298 sections in the Income Tax Act. How many chapters? You know Vadivelu? Yes. 23rd Pulikesi. So remember that there are 23 chapters. And how many schedules? Ramar went to forest for 14 years. So think of that. So 14 schedules are there in the Income Tax Act. So it is easy to understand. See, once you link the Income Tax Act with some illustrations, it is easy for a person to understand the Income Tax Act. 298 sections, 23 chapters, 14 schedules. Now we will come to section 2. In fact, all the acts, central acts, you will find section 2 is for definitions. Then you will find two important sections or two important words: exemptions, deductions. So what is this exemptions and what is this deductions? It is totally confusing. Think of section 10, that is exemptions. Think of section 80, that is deductions. How this has to be applied, we will just see those things in the subsequent slides and other things. So 298 sections, 23 chapters, 14 schedules. Think of these two sections, section 10, section 80. 10 is exemption and section 80 is deductions. Next slide. Nitin, next slide. Okay. There are 5 heads of income. Income from salary, income from house property, profit and gains, business or profession, capital gains, income from other sources. Nitin, go to the previous slide, please. Nitin, go to the previous slide.
Nitin?
Right. How to remember the chronological order of this? See, always Income Tax Act will always start in the chronological order from section 1 to section 298. If you see income from salary, it starts with section 14 to 17. Sir, how to remember that? Just think for an illustrative that at the age of 14, you have completed your degree, everything, you go for first an employment. So you get salary. So section 14 to 17, first I go for employment, I will get salary, income from salaries. Then for 3 years I work up to section 17, fine. Then at age of 22, with the savings of the salary, I will purchase a property. Nitin, have the next slide. Yes, fine. I will purchase the property and let it out those property. I will earn a rental income out of it. So section 22 to 27. This you can remember easily. Now you have salary, you have a property. Next, what they say that one in Tamil, they will say that one Veetai Kattipar, Kalyanam Pannipar. So at the age of 28, you will go for a marriage. Then kids will be born. you will not have been sufficient income for the salary as well as the house property. So what you will ask is, you cannot go for an employment because you are already in employment. You can't do a side business or something like that. So that you will ask your wife to do a business or a profession. So you will get an income out of it. So section 28 to 44. In that period, your kids would have been grown up. Now you have to give them in marriage. So what you will do? I don't have sufficient savings, so I will sell one of the property. So you will get capital gains out of it. That is at the age of 45 to 55. So now you have given your son or daughter in the marriage. You have sold the properties also. Then the surplus amounts is invested in a bank account, that is at the retirement age of 56 to 59. You earn an interest income out of it. This is income from other sources. So whenever you just remember this illustration, it will be easy for anyone. If they ask what are the 5 heads of income, you should be saying from salary, house property, business or profession, capital gains and other sources. So this is the easiest way to remember the 5 heads of income. Next slide. Nitin, next slide. Yes. Now, how to identify whether the provision is a subsection or a class? So what is this, sir? Your Income Tax Act itself is a confusion position. Now you are asking us to find out what is section, subsection, classes. It is very easy to find out a subsection. So Nitin, go to the next slide. When parts of a section are interrelated, or when whole provision emerges out by putting all the parts of the section together, then those parts are referred to as subsection. Sir, இது வரைக்கும் கிளாஸ் எடுத்தது நல்லா இருந்தது, இப்ப ரொம்ப குழப்பறீங்க சார். I will just explain it that is one. There are plenty of sections. These, if the sections are interrelated, suppose if you have, for an example, section 1, there will be subsection 1, subsection 2, subsection 3. All these sections are interrelated. Go to the next slide. You will find these subsections in all section 1, 44 AD, 139. I will take an illustration in the next slide for an example. Go to the next slide. Yes, short title, extent and commencement. This is the first section of the Income Tax Act. You will find one subsection. This act may be called the Income Tax Act 1961. Subsection 2 says it extends to the whole of India. Subsection 3 says, save as otherwise provided in this act, it shall come into force on 1st day of April 1962. Up to this, there is no problem. This subsection 1, 2, 3 are all interrelated. I cannot isolately study that this Act may be called the Income Tax Act. What is that? If I have to read subsection 2 separately, it is not possible. It extends to the whole of India. What extends to the whole of India? I have to read along with subsection 1 that Income Tax Act 1961 extends to the whole of India. And when it came into force, that I have to read in subsection 3. So all these 3 things are interrelated. Therefore, these are all subsections. Now, subsections are interrelated. Go to the next slide. How to identify classes. Whereas when these parts are independent of each other and are not interrelated, then these are referred to as classes. Generally, the mistake what is done by every practitioners, they don't know what is subsections and sections or the classes also. Suppose if we have section 1, then you have to read it as section 1, subsection 2, subsection 3. Go to the next slide. Nitin, go to the next slide. For example, in section 2, the next slide will explain that. Nitin, are you there? Nitin,
Yes.
yes.
Sir, sorry, sir, there are some internet connectivity
No,
issues for me.
no problem. For example, section 2 of the Income Tax Act 1961, which deals with definition for the purpose of the act as all classes. Now, when you read along with section 2, you are not supposed to talk about as section 2 subsection 1. You have to say that section 2 class 1. These are all not subsections. For an example, I will just take it as section 2 class 1 defines advance tax. Advance tax will have a separate definition. It can be read independently, not related to any other thing. Likewise, section 2 class 1A agriculture income, section 2 class 31 persons, so on. You can find these classes in section C 6, 43, 47 and so on. How to identify these classes? If you go through the definitions, next slide, section 2, in this act, unless the context otherwise requires, clause 1 says, advance tax means the advance tax payable in accordance with the provision of chapter 17C. So this can be read separately. You need not to link with anything. So these things are classes. So all the sections in section 2, all the definitions are always to be read as classes and not as subsections. For example, then class 8 assessment includes reassessment. Then class 9 assessment year means the period of 12 months commencing on the first day of April every year. In fact, actually, originally I should have informed everyone to participants to take if they have the Income Tax Act. If they have that, please kindly verify that. It will be easy for them to identify the difference between the subsection and the classes. So now in section 2, it starts with a reference in this act unless the context otherwise requires. So once there is a reference to this, then anything starts, it will be always called as classes. First, in section 1, what you would have seen is short title and commencement. Then there will not be any reference. You would not find anything. Straight away, it would have started with the word called. This act may be called. There is no reference. But in section 2, you will find a reference. In this act, unless the contact otherwise requires, once there is a reference like this, anything after that, it should be read as classes and not as subsections. In fact, you can find in the next slide with reference to section 10. Even in section 10 also, you find class 1, class 2, class 7. There are plenty of classes. All the sections in 10 are always classes because, in fact, it straight away says that in computing the total income of a previous year of any person, any income falling with any of the following classes shall not be included. So here section 10 is also classes. There is a reference now. So in fact, I said in section 2, you had a reference. In this act, unless the context otherwise requires. In section 10, you will have a reference called in computing the total income of a previous year of any person, any income falling with any of the following classes shall not be included. This is also one other reference than the class 1 agriculture income. Okay. So now you can find out classes will start only after reference and subsections will not have any reference. Go to the next slide. There is one clue to locate the clause in a section where soon after the reference of a section, something is stated and thereafter a reference is made like one, then that one is a clause. And where soon after the reference of section, without stating anything, a reference is made like one, then that one is subsection. Next slide. Nitin, next slide, please. Yes.
Refer section. I have changed it.
Yes. Refer section 2, in which after 2 is stated, you will have this. That's what I said in this act, unless the contact otherwise requires. So this is a reference. Then 1 is stated. Therefore, 1 is a clause of section 2. Similarly, all other such reference like 1A, 7, 24 of section 2 are all classes. Again, in section, you will also find the very same thing. This is nothing but a repetitive. So section 10 also, all these things, whatever 1, class 2, class 3, everything will have this. I will give you one other very big clue. Go to the next slide. Next slide, please. Nitin, go to the next slide.
Sir, I have changed it, sir. Now refer section 1 with
one. Go to the next slide. This is once again the same similar thing. Right. Now, another noticeable difference is that subsection starts with capital letters and ends in full stop. You can notice this in the Income Tax Act. Subsection always starts with capital letters, whereas a class starts with a small letter and ends with a semicolon, but the last class ends with full stop. This is because subsection is a complete sentence, whereas a clause is a part of a sentence. So in fact, now after just reading the previous slides and other things, this is very simple. You can find out a subsection straight away that if it starts in capital letter, you can straight away come to a conclusion that it is not a class. Once if it starts with a small letter, then you can think of whether there is any semicolon is in the end. Then you can find out easily that these are all classes. So you have to start with section 1, subsection 1, when you say section 2, class A. Section 10, class A or class 1. So this is the way in which you have to read the sections. So this is the difference between a subsection and a classes. The next slide, you will find these subsections in section 1, section 4. Section 4 is charging section. Section 5 is the scope of total income. 11 and 12 talks about the trust. See, in fact, if you see the heads of income and all those things, if you take an income tax return, you can find out all these things. The sections will be in a chronological order. Right from section 1 to the end will be only in a chronological order. In fact, in my view, if section 80 deduction has to be given, that deduction has to be given in the chronological orders only. See, I would like to tell you one thing. If you see section 2, it starts with the definition is uh, advanced tax. Section 2, subclass 1 starts with class 1 starts with advanced tax, I feel so. Then it ends with 2 class 48 with 0 coupon. See, like you find out in the dictionary the alphabetical order with A to Z. The same way it will be in the chronological order. You have to identify T where it is, F where it is. So it is easy to find out those classes in definition sections. You can just find out these all be in like dictionary A to Z in a chronological order. So therefore, in classes, you can find in section 2, section 6, section 7, 8, 10, 16, 17, 24, 27, and 28. And therefore, there are plenty of sections you will learn and so on. You can find out the difference between the subsections and classes. Now, how to find out proviso? This is very, 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 very important. Please, how to know the number of a proviso? First proviso begins with the phrase provided that. First proviso always starts as provided that. Second proviso always starts with provided further that. And the third proviso or the subsequent provisos will always start that provided also that. So how to find out whether it is the third proviso, fourth proviso, second proviso, first proviso? If it is stated as provided that, then it is first proviso. If it is stated that provided further that, you can treat it as second proviso. And if it is stated that provided also that, then that is third proviso. From that, you have to count to find out manually whether it is fourth proviso or fifth proviso or sixth proviso. If the proviso starts with provided also that, it has to be manually counted to know whether it is third proviso, fourth proviso or fifth proviso or so on. If you see section 10 class 23C, it has 18 provisos. Why most of the judges never ready to take Income Tax Act is it has more provisos, more sections, more classes. In fact, most of the times, if you the next slides, we will see that when it will never give you a direct meaning. It will always say that when, for an example, that if I have an ink pen will contain ink, nib, and cap, which will be written in a piece of paper or a paper or something like that. You can say that, but the Income Tax Act and the Wit and Wisdom, they will never say like that. They will say an ink pen, not only an ink it should be given, it may be even a red ink or a blue ink or a, so this it will always say a proviso to give you a meaning to each and every thing. So that's why we find it so cumbersome that they will say that when Income Tax Act is so cumbersome, it is very difficult for us to understand. So therefore, to understand the provisos, first proviso provided that, second proviso provided further that, and third proviso provided also that. Now we will switch on to how to find out the locate the IT rules. There is a definition, section 2, class 33 of the Income Tax Act 1961. The word prescribed is defined as follows. Prescribed means prescribed by rules made under this act. So whenever there is a word prescribed, you can definitely find out there is an attached rule. Once there is an attached rule, there should be a form to that extent. So whenever in a provision of the Income Tax Act 1961, the word prescribed or a group of words as may be prescribed or prescribed from verified in the prescribed manner is found, it suggests that there shall be some provisions in a rule or form in the income tax rule 1962. How many rules are there? It is 129 rules as of on today. So reference can be seen in section 10 class 5 to find out rule 2b. If you read the section 10 class 5, you will find rule 2b. Then if you read section 10 class 13a, you will find rule 2a. And then in fact now if you read section 14a, in fact in subsection 2 you will find prescribed by rule 8d. So then you have to go to rule 8d and then read along with that part. Then there will be a form also how to calculate and all those things. So whenever there is a word called prescribed, definitely a rule will fit into that. So I will just explain that how it has happened is, if you read section 10 class 5 in the next slide, section 10 class 5. In the case of an individual, the value of any travel concession or assistance, then there is A, from his employer for himself and his family, then ... Then B, from his employer or former employer ... It will explain. Then it will say, subject to such condition as may be prescribed. So when there is a word called as may be prescribed, then immediately rule 2b will be there in the asterisk. In the note footnote, you will find out that is rule 2b. So you have to go to rule 2b and then find out. So whenever there is a word called prescribed, you will find IT rules. We have now understood what is subsections, what are classes, what is the difference between these two, what is prescribed, then immediately how we will find out the rules, then how to find out the number of provisos. All these things we have seen. Now I will like to take you in the end only about what is the difference between an explanation and a proviso. Now I don't want to confuse it right now. So skip around 5 slides, Mr. Nitin, and come to definition of words and phrases under the income tax. Yes, stop with you. Now first we will find out certain definition of words and phrases in the Income Tax Act. Then we will go to the what is explanations and provisions. See, in the Income Tax Act, you will find the definitions in section 2. Next slide, you can just take it. In section 2, it is specifically says that it applies to the whole act unless the context otherwise requires. So when it is specifically mentioned in section 2 about a definition, it applies to the whole act. There may be certain definitions in section 3, 17, 27, 43, 55 among several other sections of this act. It has to be carefully noted when a particular definition applies to the whole act or a chapter or a section or a group of subsection or sections. What I want to say this is, if a definition is to be applied only for that chapter, it will apply only for that chapter, it will not be applied for any other things. See, in section 2, you will find that definition, it will state that it will apply for the whole act, no doubt about it. But for sections specifically, I would like to take up section 115 JB. In fact, there is a section called 115 JB. You will find in explanation 2 that it will state that this section, if you take up, because I have not put that slide in this one, you can take up the Income Tax Act and find out in 115 JB explanation 2. You will find a word called for the purpose of class A of explanation 1, the amount of income tax shall include. It will be only for that specific chapter 115 JB. You cannot state that that definition can I bring it into any other chapter or section. It is not possible. This is only for that chapter 115 JB. That section it will be applied. It says that any tax on distribution, any interest charge under this act, such charge, if any, as levied by the Central Act, Education Cess on Income Tax Act. So it includes, income tax includes surcharge and taxes. But when you see the section 2, subclass 43, class 43, you will find a word called tax in relation to the assessment year commencing for 1st April 1965, but in that they will not be mentioned about surcharge or cess. So Income Tax Act includes surcharge and cess. If that is specifically mentioned, that is for that chapter, it will be only that section will be applied for that chapter and not for any other. So that's why if a particular definition applies to a specific chapter, its meaning cannot be used in any other chapter unless it is stated otherwise. So this is what I just want to mean you that definitions will apply for whole, but there are certain definitions to each and every sections also that will apply. In fact, if you take up section 48, 49, or you will find in 55, you will find two words called cost of improvement and cost of acquisition. So those cost of improvement or cost of acquisition will be applicable to that chapter, to that section of income from capital gains. So 55, you can straight away take at the age of 55, I have sold my properties and I think so section 55 or 54, you will find those things, 48, 49 and all those things in that. Now, after these definitions, I want you to take up, there are 5 important definitions. Nitin, go to the next slide. Yes. This is very, very important. You will find the definitions in these 5 categories: inclusive definition, exhaustive definition, or you can call it as restrictive definitions, adaptive definitions, exclusive definitions, then combined definitions. Combined definitions may have both the definitions. The above 2 definitions, if you have the restrictive definition as well as an inclusive definition, is called combined definition. Now we will try to understand what is inclusive definition. Go to the next chapter. Next slide, please. Sorry. Inclusive definition can be identified by the presence of the word includes in the definition. Before, just want to tell you why I just had these inclusive definition, exhaustive definition, adaptive definition, and all those things. When I was appointed as a standing counsel for the income tax department in the year 2012, in fact, there will be a letter which will be issued by the headquarters judicial from the income tax department principal commissioner that Mr. So in exercise of the powers of the conferred, the honorable president is pleased to appoint Mr. M. Swaminathan, senior standing counsel for the income tax department for the period of. I got that letter and then I just took it to my father. My father is a retired deputy commissioner of income tax in the income tax department. So I just showed him that. Father, I have been appointed as a standing counsel for the income tax department. My father was so satisfied that then he said one word: from nowadays, from now on, you will read Income Tax Act in a proper manner. I said, I am having a practice of more than 14 years. I know what is Income Tax Act. He said, no. You would have read the act in a different manner in the wrong sense. Definitely, I will tell you that after coming to the government side, in fact, this is what I usually, Honorable Justice Sivanyanam used to say that to all the Assessees Council, whenever if someone has appeared before him, you will find out that he will say that you are in the Assessee side, come to government side, practice for 3 years. You will know the difficulties, and in fact, you will understand the act or whatever the division, whether you are in sales tax or central excise customs, whatever it may be, in whatever field. If you are in the government side, you will definitely understand the act in a better manner, because day in, day out, you will be reading that. So, to understand the definition that is called the inclusive definition, exhaustive definition, adaptive definition, and all those things, I learned it only after coming to being a standing counsel. Oh, this is what is inclusive definition and all those things. So let us straight away go to inclusive definition. You can straight away that example of this category is that section 2 clause 8 assessment includes reassessment. Therefore, protective assessment is also an assessment. So whenever in a definition, if you find the word includes, it is all inclusive definition. 2 clause 12a, books or book of account includes ledger, day books, cash book. So these are all includes, inclusive definition. 2 clause 13, business includes any trade, commerce or manufacture. Inclusive definition, there is a word called includes. Likewise, in section 2 clause 15, charitable purpose includes relief of the poor, education, medical relief includes. Then section 2 clause 24, income includes profit and gains, dividend, everything. So whenever you find the word includes, it is called inclusive definition. Then we will go to exhaustive definition. Exhaustive definition can be identified by the presence of the word means in the definition. So in inclusive definition, you have the word includes. Whenever there is a name that is in the definition, there is a word called means, it is called a restrictive definition, or you can say it as exhaustive definition. An exhaustive definition does not allow including anything from outside to the scope of the definition. So it restricts the meaning, therefore it may be called as even as a restrictive definition. For example, section 2 clause 1, advance tax means the advance tax payable in accordance with the provision of chapter 17C. Therefore, if something is paid in 17C, that will be treated as advance tax. Therefore, anything which is not stated in 17C cannot be interpreted as advance tax. So it is, you restrict something. If I say that one prescribed means prescribed by rules made under this act, means you cannot bring something inside into the act. It restricts the definition. For example, section 242b, short-term capital gains means capital gain arising from the transfer of a short-term capital asset. Now the important word is transfer of a short-term capital asset. If I say that transfer of a short-term capital asset, it can be only transfer of a short-term capital asset. You cannot bring something different in section 2 clause 42b. So whenever there is a word mean is specifically in the means is specifically mentioned, it is called exhaustive definition, or you can also define it as restrictive definition. How to understand this? And I will just explain it in the next slide. See, for example, you will find it if definition color. I have taken an example like this. Color includes violet, indigo, blue, green, yellow, orange, red. That's all. Now, magenta is also a color which is a mixture of red and blue. Cyan, a mixture of blue and green. Even black is also can be a color. So technically you can argue that black is a color. I will state that color includes black also. You can say that one. That is the ordinary parlance. You can read like that. But when it is specifically definition says color means violet, indigo, blue, green, yellow, orange, and red, then magenta, cyan, or black cannot be interpreted as a color. So definition restricts you that these are all only colors: violet, indigo, blue, green, yellow, orange, red. So black cannot be. It can be in normal parlance, it is a color, but you cannot take it for the purpose of the definition it means. Then we are going to the next slide called adaptive definition. See, most of the time in the Income Tax Act is so cumbersome. Most of the people used to say that, and I just want to give you a joke specifically on this. When my father is a retired IRS official, in 1990, he just he was about to enter the income tax building. At that time, one chartered account also came. The chartered accountant said that, "What, Mr. Muthukumaran? There is so much of cracks." So he found the building, and outside the building, he said and said that there is so much of cracks outside. That is what he want to mention, that at outside the building there is so much of. So he said, "Mr. Muthukumaran, there is so much of cracks outside the department." My father said, "You go inside the department, you will find more." So you have to read the sections or definitions in a lighter way, and you should always take income tax. You have to love the subject and then read. Otherwise, it will be very difficult. Some may find maths is a different this one. For me, science is an allergy. That's why I took the accountancy classes and all those things. So now coming to the adaptive definition, you can find this adaptive definition. What is that? You adopt certain definitions from the original act. For example, if section 2 clause 20 says director, manager, and managing agent in relation to a company have the meanings respectively assigned to them in the Companies Act 1956. So now, if they say that it respectively assigned to that Companies Act, you have to find out in the Companies Act what is the meaning of director, manager, and managing agent, then read this section. So this is called adaptive definition. Section 2 clause 29D, you will find the National Tax Tribunal means the National Tax Tribunal established under section 3 of the National Tax Tribunal Act 2005. So you have to adopt what is stated in the National Tribunals Act. In fact, there is a definition, section 2 clause 37, public servant, has the same meaning as section 21 of the Indian Penal Code. So now you go to the Indian Penal Code, find out in section 21 what is the meaning of a public servant. So you adopt certain definitions from the original act. This is called adaptive definitions. Then you will find exclusive definitions. Exclusive definition can be easily found out. It will have a phrase that does not include. So if you take section 2 clause 14, capital asset means property of any kind held by an assessee, whether or not connected with his business or profession, but does not include any stock in trade, consumable stores, raw materials for the purpose of his business or profession. See, I'll just put it in this way in the small example to this capital asset. See, for a jewelry person, I sell jewelry. This is a stock in trade. It is my business. But for the very same jewelry person, he may hold certain jewels for his wife, which will be an asset or a capital asset. So that's why the section specifically says capital asset means property of any kind held by an assessee, whether or not connected with his business or profession, but does not include. So stock in trade, it does not include. Likewise, in a furniture person. So for a furniture seller, for table and chair for him will be a stock in trade. For his own purpose, he will have a table and chair. That is capital asset. So the exclusive definition always states that it states that this is what capital asset, but it does not include, and it will remove certain things from such a definition. That's why it is an exclusive definition. Then we will see the combined definition. You will find combined definition, both the word mean as well as inclusive definition. For an example, I will just straight away take you to section 2, clause 7. Assessee means a person by whom any tax or any other sum of money is payable under this act. So this is one part. You have to read this section in parts. Assessee means a person by whom any tax or any other sum of money is payable under this act. Now this restricts, this is a restrictive definition. Then it says and includes, it is inclusive definition. Every person in respect of whom any proceedings have been taken into this act, he will also be called as an assessee. Or every defaulter on this act will also be called as an assessee. Or every person who is deemed to be an assessee under any provision of this act will also be called as an assessee. So a combined definition will have both a restrictive definition as well as an inclusive definition, which is called as combined definition. So it says means as well as it's inclusive. So we have gone through the 5 heads of definitions: inclusive, exhaustive, adaptive, exclusive, and combined definition. Now you will find these 5 phrases which I want to specifically: notwithstanding anything contained, then subject to the provision of, save as provided in this act, without prejudice to. These are the normal 5 phrases which you find generally in the income tax. What it states. Now we will go to first, notwithstanding anything contained. This is a non-abstinent class, and it means in spite of all these things, the provision, I'll just put it in a simple language. The provision containing the word notwithstanding shall have an overriding effect to any other provision. Simple. If you have this word notwithstanding, it is overriding effect of any other provisions. Straight away, it will. For an example, in the next slide, I have an example. Section 9, subsection 2 says, notwithstanding anything contained in subsection 1. So subsection 1 states something, it is not applicable. In spite of that, then in section 12, subsection 3, you will find notwithstanding anything contained in section 11. Section 11 may state something, but that will not be applicable. Notwithstanding what is stated in section 11, any amount of donation received, and it will state all those things. So in spite of, if you find out, this is a non-abstinent class which will overriding effect to any other provisions. This is what notwithstanding anything contained. Okay. Now, subject to the provisions of. What is this? When any provision contains this phrase, it attaches a condition that the provision of the specified section are also to be complied with. That is, while complying with the provision where this phrase occurs, other provision when mentioned therein must also be complied. So for an example, this section, if it starts with subject to the provision of, I have given an example. Section 10 clause 2 states, subject to the provision of subsection 2 of section 64. So now, to satisfy this, you have to satisfy 10 clause 2. You must also satisfy section 64 subsection 2 also. So you have to satisfy both the conditions. That's why it states that you have to comply both the provisions without affecting the other provisions also. So it will be subject to the provision. You have to condition this as well as the whatever stated in that section also. Now we will go to without prejudice. Sorry, save as otherwise provided in this act. When any provision contains this phrase, it implies that the provision of this section has to be applied without affecting any provision in which something else is stated. This is something you couldn't understand. If you would find in section 1, subsection 3, save as otherwise provided in this act, you will also find in the heads of income. I will put it in a simpler method way. You should not suppose if there is an income which is being received by an assessee. This should be charged in the 5 heads of income what is stated in section 14. It can come under the salaries, it can come under the house property, profit and gains, business or profession, capital gains, income from other sources. Only in these 5 heads it will come. That's why it save as otherwise provided in this act means all income shall, the purpose of charge of income should be only in these 5 heads of income and not in any other. This is called the save as otherwise provided in this act. Then the next slide you will find without prejudice to. When any provision contains this phrase, it implies that the provision has to be applied without affecting other provision of the act which may deal with the same subject matter. Previously, without affecting other provision, we have found that is called save as otherwise provided in this act. But now, there may be 2 sections which will be dealing with the same subject matter. You should not affect each other. For example, 12AA4, that is subsection 4, without prejudice to the provision of subsection 3. So, subsection 3 talks about something on the very same subject matter. That should not be affected, as well as what is stated in 4 should not be affected. That is what without prejudice to. Then you will find out nothing contained in section or section shall operate so as to exclude from. What is this? When any provision contains this phrase, it implies that the referred sections are excluded from the applicability of the whole section. If you find out in section 13 subsection 1, it will be specifically mentioned that nothing contained in section 11. So, section 11 will not be applicable at all. Or section 12 will not be applicable at all. So that is what nothing contained in section shall operate so as to exclude from. Now you go to the previous slides please. Now we will just come to the what is proviso. You would find the yes, what is proviso. What is this proviso and what is this explanation? You take the next slide, I will just explain it in a clear manner. Let us say that a rule relates to fruit. Suppose if the rule says that fruit, then the proviso should also relate to fruit. For example, in breakfast, if the rule says in breakfast, one should eat sufficient fruits. then the proviso should always come then, provided that more than one banana should not be eaten. Generally, proviso will give you a restrictive, but it cannot be provided that more than one piece of bread should not be eaten. If you say like that, then banana is related to fruit, whereas bread is not related to fruit. So a proviso cannot be not equal to, if it is states fruit, you have to state fruit. If it is states bread, if it is states state bread, or if it states food, then it will have. So that's why in the above example, if the rule is modified as in breakfast, one should eat sufficient food, then both the provisions are possible because banana and bread relate to food. Now I will put it in a very simpler form. This one. Ordinarily, if you go to the next slide, you find explanations and proviso. See, explanation is specifically used to explain the main provision without any ambiguity or any confusion or doubts. You can very easily you can understand that explanation is normally, it is a clarification on nature and retrospective in operation. Or you can just think of that explanation removes doubt, because in sections why there are so much of explanations is they may find some mischief things in the main section. To remove those things, the explanations were brought to remove the confusions in the existing provisions. But if you find a proviso always states that you have to satisfy the main, and provided that, it will always say, why it says that provided that you have to satisfy the main condition as well as this condition also. So this is a proviso will be always, cannot be a foreign to the main explanation. It will be always equal to the main section. So this is the difference between explanation and a section. If you read the act, and I'll just read one explanation or one proviso, you will straight away understand that what is this. I will take to section 2 or section 2, which I am talking about. Explanation 1. For the purpose of this class, undertaking shall include any part of an undertaking, that is, which I am reading is class 19AA. So the explanation will always talk about for the purpose of, for removal of doubts. You can simply just what is explanation? It is always talks about for the purpose of, or for removal of doubts. But proviso is not like that. It says provided you have to satisfy the main provision as well as this also. If you read any provision, it still says that provided that office of the company, corporation, institution, association or body in all cases in India. So it will, the proviso will give the meaning, or which will not be how to the provision cannot enlarge the main section itself. It will does not enlarge, it limits to this one, it restricts certain things. If you read the sections under the act, you will understand the holistic what is the meaning of explanation, proviso and all those things. Just I want to give just 5 minutes. I just want to give you 2 tips on this. If you see the Income Tax Act, you will not find a word called legal act. you will, in the Income Tax Act, you will never find a word called legal act. You will always find a word called legal representative. Why, sir? See, what happens is, suppose if a father is having a property, he is having a son. The father's self-acquired property, but he writes the property to a third person. Now, son is a legal heir, but for the purpose of Income Tax Act, we will only catch hold of the legal representative and not the legal heir. That's why you will, if you go through to section 159, 160 and 161, you will find out that there is a word called legal representative and not the word called legal heir. And I just want to give you one another tips also. In penalty cases, 271 1C will talk about the penalty. If the penalty is not taken, you cannot take the income tax department cannot take a penalty on the legal heirs, because you have to satisfy two conditions. I have filed the inaccurate particulars of income, and I should also satisfy that I have concealed the income. The concealment was done by my father, not by me. Therefore, if you take section 159, subsection 4, every legal representative shall be personally liable for any tax payable by him. So tax never includes penalty. There will be a specific word called tax only, not penalty. So there are these type of tips and other things. I think you can go to the last slide. Thank you very much for the patient hearing. Whether I have covered or not, see, in fact, these are all budding judges and budding members and budding senior advocates. I don't consider you people as junior advocates or any other thing. So any doubts, you can send it to this mail ID, and you can have my phone number also. So you can just contact me for anything. You should be, two things I will advise is, just thorough in the facts of the case, just thorough in the sections and act, how to read about the sections. Each and every time, whenever you read a section, you will innovate a new things. So read continuously. This is, thank you very much for patient hearing. Thank you, Nitin. Thank you, Prithvi. Thanks. Then now the floor is for yours. You can shoot up any question in the Income Tax Act, please, except the transfer pricing and other numbers. If I can solve it, I will definitely I will give you. Otherwise, you just give these questions. I will definitely explain it.
Thank you very much, sir.
The heads of income in this manner, you can just think of that in a chronological manner. It will be very easy. That's why, in fact, all these the slides, everything is all made by my brother, who is a chartered accountant by name M. Jayaraman. So any mistakes, it is only his fault and not my fault. And then he takes classes. See, once you just take classes and spread your knowledge, you will gain knowledge. This is what I have learned. My father is also taking classes for all the income tax officials, and I am also taking classes in the Director Regional Training Institute for classes for all the officers. So once you spread your knowledge, you will gain knowledge. Yes, you can shoot up questions, please.
I don't see any questions coming up. I know it was a very simplified and informative session. I think, sir, everyone is already very clear with the acts.
I think my brother T.R. Sendil Kumar is there. Sendil, are you there?
Sir, I think we've got one question, sir. Before that, Clint wants to ask that question.
Yes, please.
Clint, you're on.
Hello, sir. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Clint. How are you?
Fine, sir. Sir, one small doubt, sir. Sir, what is the difference between assessing officer and recovery officer, sir?
See, once you pass the assessment order, he is called an assessing officer. The person after that, it goes to the TRO, which is called a recovery officer, which is a separate procedure, which is you will find out in Rule 2, Schedule 2 of the Income Tax Act. You will find
Yes, sir.
out that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Assessing officer will be passing only the assessment order. He will also collect the demand and all those things. He could not collect the demand, everything. Then subsequently it will go to the tax recovery officer, because he will not be concentrating on the same for recovery and all those things. So that will go to the tax recovery officer. Then they will recover by attaching the property and all those things. So this is the difference between the assessing officer and the tax recovery officer.
Sir, this was the same issue which happened in customs, where proper officer and customs officer, which
Okay.
was challenged in Supreme Court. Is there something like that where they have challenged or something?
No. In fact, I don't know about that, because I just give you an example that what is an assessing officer. You can find out even in the definition. If you find out whether there is any word called assessing officer.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Excellent.
So there have been a lot of requests for you to take further classes also, sir, on specific topics. So, sir, whenever you have the time, sir, you can let us know. Let me know, sir. I can definitely. I think the more number of participants are now eagerly waiting to hear more from you, sir.
In fact, actually,
Like that, Sendil Kumar, sir, even you can come forward, sir.
that's what I
All our seniors who are here.
see. In fact,
Hema ma'am is also here. My father is also here. So if a particular topic can be taken by one of you, sir, it would be great, sir.
actually, we can be a moderator for something. They can shoot up questions, or in fact, we will take up each section and explain of the each sections by. I can take some 263. Sendil can take up on such matters. Hema Murli can take up some chapters on writ and other things. So
All these basic explanations will definitely help us, sir, because
in fact,
Explain, sir. In fact, TRO has been defined under section 244.
yes.
Yes, sir.
Section 2, class 44.
So there it has been defined as a tax recovery officer means any income tax officer who may be authorized by the principal commissioner or the commissioner general or by special order in writing to exercise the powers of tax recovery officer. So it has been very well clarified by
Absolutely correct, Sendil. Thank you very much. Thanks. Virtually, in fact, section 2, class 44 clearly explains who is a tax recovery officer. Go through.
240, section 244, sir. 244.
No. Section
2
2,
subclause
class
44.
44. That's what I
2
said.
subclause 44.
Yes, not it's only class. You can have it as section 2, class 44.
Clause 44.
Okay, sir. Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Senthil, sir.
Thank you, sir. Sir,
Thank you.
Nitin just wants to come in and give the vote of thanks, sir.
Yes, please.
Nitin.